welcome back to the Nutrimedical Report. By the way, and just to give you a little kudos here, your Twiland.info is so great in the show interviews that the two most popular hours are the hour when Michelle's on first hour and your hour on the third hour on Friday.
All right.
We cover biosecurity, we cover earth changes, we cover lots of things that are really important that people are not going to hear in any other show, in this or any other network, at a level of science and expertise and references that if your blog and with what we do on the air. And we're now adding a new dimension. I've actually, I think I've already sent you the documents for our upgraded training for the new premium version live stream. I've been using live stream for 5 years plus, but this new live stream is seriously awesome. It's way better than Vimeo, YouTube, or Skype, or anything else. It allows us to do HD video. We can actually have a live program. People can actually chat in the live program. You can also have it set up so they can either call in to the program. We can screen and calls and so on, and even have people live on air. And we also archive them all, and it's all free. We're not going to charge anybody a thing to get access to our live stream or our YouTube videos. And of course, you'll be able to put up things at any of your time when you're ready. If you want to put up a 10-minute blurb on something, you can embed it on your blog, or you can send it over to me, or you can put it anywhere. You can actually convert it to YouTube very easily. Just drop and drag it into your YouTube channel. It doesn't cost you a cent. Wow. So all this stuff is going to be available to the people out there, and they can actually, with this new format, see it on their iPhone, iPad, anywhere on Earth, free. Pretty cool, hey?
Pretty cool.
Yeah, I pay for all the costs to make sure that people can't complain, oh, he charges so much? How about nothing? That's pretty cool. Now, let's go over all the biosecurity issues: viral hemorrhagic fever, Ebola, Lassa Fever, poisonings, superbugs, all this good stuff. Let's go over the details.
Well, we just got this is a breaking news, is that Liberia has an Ebola case. And Liberia has been cleared of Ebola. This was the third time, and now they'll have to go through another quarantine period. And they haven't said how many people they might have in quarantine. So that is scary because they just closed their border with Guinea. Guinea now has 1,000 people under quarantine, under observation, because of 3 cases of Ebola in Guinea.
Right. Well, there's several different what I call conventional things that can be done right now. When our teams went over to Liberia, we used gene bioengines to do PCR to determine if people had the disease. Not measuring antibodies, measuring the actual what's called polymerase chain reaction amplification using test kits. And these had kits that were designed to pick up Ebola. The second thing is they should quarantine people even without symptoms or fever or whatever if they show the PCR positive test. The same way when people are coming in with Zika virus, they should be given things like, hey, don't have sex on them, condoms, don't do this, don't do that, don't go to an insect-infested area where you're going to get bitten because you're going to now transfer the virus into other people. And then there's some more what we call exotic techniques to get rid of pathogens, which I can talk about. One of them is the Russians developed in the 70s using their application of quantum physics to solid matter and biological systems. They developed what's called a scalar anti-pathogenic bomb. And they had in the release of one of their biological weapons that I know about that's classified out of their facility north of Moscow in the 70s. And they actually used this bomb to actually kill off all the pathogens with a resonant frequency that had this up to 1,500 radio kilometers. So those things can be done, just like we can break radioisotopes using subatomic quantum physics to actually break isotopes, just like Nikola Tesla mentioned in a letter to Madame Curie back in the 1920s. That's almost 100 years ago. So if people say you can't do this, I'm saying the human mind, if applied artfully and scientifically, can solve or can literally conquer anything. There's nothing, as it says in the Bible in Genesis, that can be withheld from us collectively because we are in one place and of one language, which is now the Internet, and the ability to even do spontaneous translations through Google Translate and other techniques from one language to another. So the idea that we can't conquer these things, we are using what I call stupid, automated means of biosecurity, which is why we're sitting ducks for really major pandemics that will kill us and other parts of the biosphere off. And our whole approach is stupid, the way we're approaching it, like measuring temperatures when people come in the airports and doing other things. We need to have a completely different approach. If someone comes in with a very deadly spreadable disease, they need to go into quarantine, and we can prove that they are PCR negative.
Exactly. And they're not doing that at all. They're in the Zika case, what they're concentrating on is killing the mosquitoes, but we both know that it's not 100%. It's either 80% or 90%, and in 2 or 3 months you've got just as many mosquitoes as you had to begin with.
Well, they said already in the research that Oxitec did that within 2 months after release of mosquitoes to reduce the population 85 to 92%, that the rebound, the population returned to normal in 2 months.
Yeah,
so,
2 months.
And the problem is, you see, that 1 in 200 of these mosquitoes that are manually, sampled is female, and that even with very trace amounts of tetracycline, the Oxitec OX513A gene, double-stranded DNA gene, survives, and it can reinsert in different parts of the insect genome. It can jump because of the riddle genes into other organisms, and it's my thesis, which can be proven with tests. Again, remember, it's a theory; it's not proven yet. That the riddle gene and these what's called jumping genes that actually can jump in and insert itself in different genomes. And in fact, Dr. Mei-Wan Ho has proven that in 2001, his follow-up letter from 2014 said very clearly that this happened with the Bulworth moth that was inserted in Georgia, and it's already inserted in other insects and into plants double-stranded DNA that's changed their biology. It doesn't just change one set of genes, it can change regulatory genes for hundreds of genes. So the real problem is we really have no idea what it's going to do to fertility, vitamin levels, organism behavior, all kinds of stuff we didn't expect. When they did the genetics on the Zika virus, there's only 15 base pairs changed in 10,000 base pairs, which means whatever changed caused it to be much more lethal in terms of causing brain inflammation in elderly people, or a Zika virus-induced UPR unfolding protein response causing apoptosis, especially in the early first trimester. I'm pretty certain that you could do a test of not only the presence of the gene, because they should do PCR, not just presence of the virus, but they actually should do what's called FLIR testing, or fluorescent immunological testing, to see if these genes are now inserting into the population of humans. For example, I want to know if Mr. XYZ that went to Brazil, if he not only carries Zika virus, or had Zika virus, but does he have persisting in his blood, saliva, or his urine. I want to know if he has these persisting genes, because if these cells are now under oxidative stress, the RNA viruses that infect his tissues are going to increase their rate of mutation dramatically. This is a lab-proven thing. You increase oxidative stress and free radicals, RNA viruses mutate at 10,000 times faster than DNA viruses. That's just a fact. It's a lab fact. It's not my conjecture. It's a lab fact. It's published. So if that theory is true, that the new Zika virus mutation, which they're by the way planning on releasing this summer in Florida, Zika virus is to reduce the mosquito populations. It'll be a new platform to weaponize other viral pathogens that can affect us and the wildlife. Not good. Because I don't think they know what the heck they're doing. And I'm raising questions that need to have studies to prove if this thesis is correct, that it's a weaponizing platform that's the real problem, not just the Zika virus. We got a big problem, as they say, Houston.
Well, they did a study finally on Ebola, and they did a study that was sufficient to merit publication. And so I'm going to give you some rates on where the Ebola and how long it lasts in the body. Right. For instance, in the eye, it lasts 98 days, so that's 3 months. Right. So that's 3 months in the eye. It lasts 282 days in the central nervous system. That's almost 3/4 of the year. That's 9 months. It lasts 82 days. That's almost 3 months. In semen, in the breast, it lasts 15 days. And in the urinary tract, 26 days, which is almost a month.
Right. And that's what their current numbers are. We don't know in certain circumstances. It may last longer. The problem is
exactly.
Yeah, we don't know. But what we should, first thing when you're doing science is number one, don't make a priori assumptions. Admit what you don't know and set up a thesis to prove your so-called theory with lab tests and a paradigm that can be proven with a Z-score that makes it likely impossible. We have to be imaginative in terms of solutions. Some of these are actually pretty straightforward. We have them right off the shelf, these kits that can be designed for specific things like Ebola or Lassa Fever or Zika virus. I'd like to see, for example, and what the FDA has been doing is actually interfering with labs like this lab at this children's hospital in Houston want to make a rapid test to determine by PCR if it's present. what I'd like to see is something like a bracelet. I mean, just use your imagination where you have a bracelet. The sweat would contain enough RNA that could trigger off a PCR amplification technology that would tell you the GPS coordinates of a person that the bracelet went positive. So you'd take your truck through all the villages in Liberia or whatever, and if the bracelet went beep, 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 it would tell you better drive your truck along, get these people, get them into treatment immediately before the virus starts to kill them. And, of course, we have universal antipathogenics that we know will kill all viruses, bacteria, pathogens, parasites, etc. And we have to also clean up the environment. I mean, what we have to do is figure out what can we use on the environment that will kill off the virus. We have to stop people eating bushmeat, which is crazy because they still eat bushmeat even in New York City, where, believe it or not, you can go to specific parts of the city and you can find bushmeat from Africa or some other country. And people will still do that. It's like, are you crazy? Don't you understand these pathogens like TB and Ebola and everything are all through this bushmeat? But people still do it. So we got to educate them. And we also have to supply them with alternate food and maybe an alternate economy so they're educated. I don't see why we can't partner with people like Elon Musk to get high-speed internet all over the world through these low Earth orbit satellites so we can start up what we call seed industries to these places, help them get energy systems like Professor McCanney systems so we can actually start providing energy so they can actually have, scooters and everything run on electric, start developing their own hydroponics or whatever so they can supply themselves with food, have enough power to pump up primary water. I mean, to be honest with you, the solutions to every problem on Earth is all dependent on our attitude toward learning and creating solutions that seem impossible. If someone was visiting our age today from even 100 years ago, they say 99% of what we do would have been impossible to them 100 years ago.
Oh, that's exactly right.
Impossible. I mean, my grandparent was born at a time when the first plane had not flown. Okay? Mm-hmm. So, and now we're not only going to the moon, but, with Tier 1 science, I'm telling you, we've gone to Mars, we have satellites up in deep space, we have, all kinds of things going on that bioscience people have no idea how advanced our science is, which is sequestered away from the general public, including nuclear tokamak fusion reactors, all kinds of stuff. I mean, literally, the only thing that's limiting us is evil and the lack of our willingness to use our imagination and also to be honest. That's why people like Donald Trump are successful, because despite him being what we call an unpolished politician, which is why he makes stupid gaffes like saying he's going to punish the women, which he later retracts because he really didn't really mean that with abortion. He means if abortion is illegal, you want to punish the doctor and the nurses and so on and grab them right away. And
well, that whole argument is, it makes no sense at all.
It doesn't even make sense, though. Why are you going to punish a woman who's stupid enough to go to a legal abortuary where she could get infection or get a punctured uterus or end up with what's called Asherman syndrome, where her uterus is so scraped she can never have a pregnancy again? And by the way, if you're at risk of getting cancer, your cancer risk goes up considerably if you had an abortion, because the hormonal changes when you terminate a pregnancy increase breast and uterine cancer in the future. I reviewed all the literature and presented this to the Royal Commission on New Reproductive Technology in 1992. So you don't punish the woman. What you do is you punish the system, which thinks it's okay to terminate human beings beyond the state of an embryo. And that's really scary, because people don't understand. If you can start manipulating embryos, you can create transhumans. You can start, creating Zootopia, where you say, hey, I want my kitty cat to talk to me, or my doggie. They're no longer a dog. They're a dog-human hybrid. I mean, this is scary stuff. And
well, they already have GMO pets, I think. They have made a whole set of, miniature horses. Have you seen the miniature horses?
Yeah, I have.
Anyway, they're cute pets.
They're cute pets, but I saw one on a commercial, actually. I think it was for Amazon, where they had this little tiny horses. Like, I know they have these Shetland ponies and so on, which are kind of natural, but they have them now even smaller. It's like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It's like Lilliputian land,
Okay, well, that's probably enough about Ebola. We still do. We're still looking at Lassa Fever. We still have somebody here in Atlanta at the Emory University that's being treated. At least I haven't been told that he's been released. Now, as far as poisons go, we have a frozen dog duck bat slider that could have listeria. And the problem with that is I know that humans aren't going to eat that, although some humans might. But the main thing is that you'll get it on your hands, and then you'll put your hands to your mouth, and then you can end up dead.
Right. Well, Listeria also forms as a spore former. And there have been entire hospitals, not only here, but in Great Britain, that have been closed down because Listeria monocytogenes can actually get in the plenum chambers of air conditioning systems and persist in the entire hospital. Literally is at the point where you have to incinerate it or rip out the entire air conditioning system. So Listeria is not a funny thing to deal with. And same with salmonella. If you get salmonella, you can get embolic, literally embolism of salmonella can cause, to your brain, your heart. It can cause your, rupture of your liver. I mean, it's not a pretty sight if you get salmonellosis.
Well, and not only that, it's a superbug, so it doesn't respond to current antibacteria.
Right, what it does to ours. I mean, we have things that will kill it off, but the conventional doctors, to be honest with you, are in the dark ages. And the big pharma industry has said, uncle, they realize that they can't put another $1 billion into making another useless antibiotic that won't cross the biofilm, or the organism will soon develop resistance to it, because it's overused, of course.
Yes.
What's the next one? You got Elizabeth Kinga Anopheles. What's that story?
Yes, that's their bacteria. It's a common bacteria, but it's very rare in that humans don't normally get it. And they've had an outbreak in Wisconsin, which has moved into Michigan. And in Wisconsin, they sickened 54 and they killed 17. But it usually just attacks people who are immune compromised. So the old, the young. Where
did that originate? That's weird that it would show up in Wisconsin. Why Wisconsin?
Well, that's a good question. You might think bioterrorism. They don't know. They really don't know why people are getting sick from it.
Well, there's several different parameters that I see are happening to our population. The first thing is, with Fukushima Daiichi, with increasing smart meters and radiation, with increasing stress in our society and mineral deficiencies and GMO-modified food, people's immune system function is falling. I talked to my colleague and co-scientist that I did work with back in the early 80s, Dr. Arista Vujnani, who's a immunologist. He has, excuse me, immunosciences in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And he showed a 3 to 5% reduction in the immune systems of all ages, of all groups, per decade for the last 3 decades.
Wow.
Quantitatively, of natural killer cell activity. So if we wonder why people are getting sicker, we're getting weaker. And let's get into your Earth changes stuff that you have. We have lots of other information here, too, on nuclear security and Turkey Point, which we want to touch on, too, because we had an interesting report yesterday from Chris Harris about the fact we're running out of nuclear safety engineers and technicians around the world. That's why it's not just a problem for Fukushima Daiichi's in every country on Earth where they're getting older, and the average age of the technician now is 55, and they're very quickly approaching retirement, while reactors are being shut down. They're post-geriatric. Plus, we have Earth changes happening that make it much more likely that these nuclear reactors are going to have problems, big problems. So let's get into that with this latest Pavlov, volcanic release.
Yes, that's one of the volcanoes in the United States. It's in the Aleutian Islands, and it erupted. Now, if you look at the activity, the volcanic activity for this last week, you'll see that we have 5 new volcanoes, 5 new erupting volcanoes, and one of them is in Russia over at the Kuril Islands, and actually 2 of them are there. One's in the Philippines, which isn't a surprise, but we also have Pavlov in the United States, that is in Alaska, and the Sangay in Ecuador. In addition, we have ongoing eruptions for well, I just lost it. I have to find it again. For other volcanoes that are around the world. So
I got them right here. I have here the Aria in Kyushu, Japan, Bagana. You've got, this is from your notes, by the way, from your amazing newsletter. Bagana, Chiropoi from the Kuril Islands, Colima in Mexico, Copahu in central Chile, Dukono in Halmahera in Indonesia, and Fuego in Guatemala, Ibu in Indonesia. I mean, there's a whole long list here. It's like very long. It's like, wow. Volcanism and earthquakes are increasing dramatically.
Now, this Pavlov volcano is a little unusual because it's spewing ash. Well, it started out at 20,000 feet, and then it went to 30,000 feet, and I understand now it's at 37,000 feet. So that means it's up in the jet stream.
Right.
And that ash is going to circumnavigate the globe.
Right. There's 3 different characteristics of ash people need to be aware of. Number 1, if there's ash up in the air and a jet engine takes it in, it chews up the veins of the jet engine. So you can have an engine that might take, service so many thousand, so many hundred air miles, or 1,000 air miles. It chops it down by 95% if it flies through even just once through a volcanic ash cloud, which you can't see except on these special types of radar. Okay.
They've canceled over half of the air flights in Alaska at this time.
Right, and your engines can actually cut right out on you when you fly forward under these ash clouds if it chews up the engine brains enough. Second characteristic is a lot of them are very high in fluoride, and they're also very high in heavy metals and radioisotopes. So, for example, the volcanic activity out of Iceland and these areas up in the North Atlantic up around Norway, and these are well known to have very high fluoride content, and this is what killed off the vegetation in Europe and France before the French Revolution. They had actually basically no food for a couple of years after the release of these big volcanoes a few hundred years ago. And they also were radioactive. They had a lot of radioactivity, radioactive strontium and other isotopes present in there. So people need to be aware. They also these particles. If you're outside and you're a horse and you suck in these particles, you'll start bleeding from your nostrils and your lungs like crazy. So you can have an ash cloud-induced respiratory and nasal hemorrhage syndrome that can kill you.
That's right. That's how the people in Pompeii killed. They weren't killed by the lava. They were killed by the ash cloud that descended.
Yeah, the ash cloud made them bleed to death into their lungs, and they actually suffocated in their own blood.
Yes.
Yeah,
and the other thing we need to mention, Dr. Bill, is that when this circumnavigates the world, it's going to cut down on the amount of sunlight that gets down to the Earth's surface, and that means that we're going to have less sun for growing plants.
Now, the reason why this has happened, I know you go on a John Moore show on Republic Radio on Fridays, and John is an expert on the Earth changes area. He's been actually talking about it way back to even the Prophecy Club in the 90s. I've got a lot of regular and classified information that shows that there is a dwarf star in the Oort cloud about 0.73 light years out, and there are a number of orbital objects, if you want to call it a mini solar system, around this object. Its probable orbital circular pattern is many thousands of years. Some people estimate between 3,600 and 20,000 years that it circulates around the sun. It's my estimation that this object is not in the inner solar system from all the evidence I've seen, in contrary to a lot of people out there that are delusional. But there is an object generating gravity waves, and it's very large. It's probably the size of 20 or 30% of the mass of our sun. As it moves in and out of alignment with various planets, it not only changes their orbital pathway, it generates gravity waves that change the volcanism of our inner planets. It also changes the solar activity energy output of the sun. Those gravity waves increase volcanism. It's like hitting a jig with a hammer. It's going to make things jump. And the gravitational waves, as they hit the planet Earth, they increase the release of nascent water from ringwoodite in the inner part of the mantle, between 400 and 700 kilometers down, and nascent water causes a melting point of rock to drop, so you end up creating magma. Magma is not created by the Earth deciding to just get melty. It's nascent water, oxygen, and hydrogen being released by ringwoodite being hit by gravity waves. That's my theory. And I've talked to various experts, including those tied with Northwestern University, and they think my gravity wave theory makes sense because we have gravity wave telescopy, including the LIGO, the Linear Observatory and Gravitonic Observatory, which just got reactivated, and that's when they quote found these objects in deep space. And then also the ALMA telescope, the Atacama Long Array telescope, actually, with international scientists have shown the same thing. There is something out there. Now, I don't know exactly what it's doing, but whatever it's doing is dramatically increasing volcanism and earthquakes. It's also changing the solar output of the sun to much higher level ultraviolet C, X-rays, ground level radiation, and changing its visual light spectrum. That's changing. This means Earth changes and weather and so on are not just something happening because we're doing something stupid on Earth, which is a very minor thing. It's like the pimple on the back of an elephant, our output of so-called greenhouse gases, which knuckleheads like the Pope and Obama want to push. Carbon taxes. No. If you're trying to do the carbon tax, you're just trying to see if you can generate other energy things to reduce heavy metal pollution from dirty coal like in China. The real issue here is we're going through Earth changes that are pretty cataclysmic, and whatever's going on in the sun is influenced by something out in deep space as far out as 0.73 light years. That's a long way out. Around 100 times the orbital distance of Uranus from the sun. That's a long way out. But they're massive
well, I want to mention that in addition to Pavlov erupting so dramatically, we also had a 7.8 magnitude earthquake on the nascent tectonic plate that is rising in the Indian Ocean. It started rising after that 9.0 earthquake that occurred on Achibanda. How many years ago was that? 5 years ago, I guess.
5-6 years ago. You're talking about the one on Christmas Eve, right? Back that was the Aceh. Yeah. Now that was happened actually. Here's what happened, and I have a report also from the U.S. Geological. Just put an announcement this week that natural induced earthquakes could put at risk many millions of Americans. And it's caused by fracking. People need to understand fracking triggers off earthquakes in places you wouldn't expect them, like Colorado, Nebraska, Oklahoma, etc. When you frack, you change the specific gravity between the tectonic plates and you increase the risk. The Department of Mines, actually just doing research at the University of Colorado years ago, pumped water down between the tectonic plates in Boulder, and it triggered off, I think, a 4.7 earthquake, which is a pretty big one, just by putting water down there. So people need to understand fracking is dangerous, and it's also stupid because it destroys the water table, the aquifers, and poisons the water with toxic chemicals. Pretty dang stupid.
Yeah, it poisons our drinking water.
Right. So when Bernie Sanders, he disagrees with the idiot Hillary Rotten Clinton, and she doesn't want to upset governors or Democrat because they're fracking, she's crazy and evil, and he's telling the truth. With that cute little smile on, with the nasal prongs on, and all the little things stuck to his chest.
Can you see that his eyes are yellow?
Yeah, you can see some sclerolicterus, it's called. That means the liver is under stress, and the liver is creating a release of bilirubin that's causing sclerolicterus. Well,
that's that Elizabethia bacteria that's up in Wisconsin is doing that.
Right. Now,
so it isn't. It's the people with with compromised immune systems, and that includes babies as well as older people.
Well, I think all people are. In fact, my colleague, I mentioned just before the break, Jonathan, basically, Dr. Aristo Vujdani, trained in Israel, trained in the UCLA. He was actually doing his PhD with Dr. Chung when I assisted them in their research project measuring hapten-induced autoimmune disease and cancer with toluene isocyanate from diesel fuel, formaldehyde, and fast-drying, toluene isocyanate and trimethyltic anhydride from diesel fuel. And what happens is it attaches to body proteins and makes them thousands to millions of times more allergenic, inducing autoimmune disease and cancer. And I believe in his quantitative tests of T killer cell function has shown a 2 to 5% decrease in all age cohorts over the last 30 years has been a decrease in the immune system function to kill pathogens off in the entire human race that he's tested, not just here in North America, but he's tested people all over the world. So what I see happening is the human race is starting to lose its immune system. And we're getting more and more fragile as organisms are spreading faster, and ground level radiation and ozone are increasing, and the factors that cause increased mutation, because when a host gets under oxidative stress and there's higher levels of free radicals in a host, this has been proven in research with using cyclotrons. That's why I put that together in my Zika theory about the Zika virus OX513A as a cause of weaponizing the Zika virus, is a genetic change that our entire population, not only of humans but animals, are under increased oxidative stress from radiotoxins, pollutants, genetically modified food, increased ground level ozone, increased radiation on the Earth because increased radiation open from the sun, the amount of ultraviolet B or high radiation was increased from 23% in 24 years ago to over 73% now. So if you actually get a UV meter for UV, B, C, and D, A will tan you, B will burn you, C will cause cancer, and D will kill you. Dead, EAD. And the radiation levels are dramatically increasing. Now also you photoactivate not only biological molecules in your skin that go through your skin from ultraviolet light, many drugs doctors are totally unaware of are photoactivated, being not only cancer-inducing but can cause immune system dysfunction and can harm various enzymes in your body. There's a lot of drugs that the doctors say, well, don't go out in the sun. They don't tell you it's not just don't go out in the sun. These drugs, when they're photoactivated, will give you cancer. Okay?
Yeah, normally they just tell you that you're going to get a sunburn.
Right. For example, I'll give you one that most knucklehead doctors don't know about. You ever heard of a thing called DNA Gyrase 4? Probably not. DNA Gyrase 4 is an enzyme that's present in your own mitochondria, but it's also present in bacteria. And if you give them a DNA Gyrase 4 inhibitor drug like Levaquin or moxifloxacin, and you expose them to sunlight, these molecules become incredibly toxic to your mitochondria in your body, and they can wipe out your mitochondria and cause a muscle myopathy and affect the mitochondria in your brain as well. Not good. Now, if it affects your T killer lymphocytes, your immune system starts to fail even further because you've knocked out DNA Gyrase 4. So when doctors say, well, it's not good because you'll get a little burn, no. It's a lot worse than that. You're activating molecules that can give you cancer, mitochondriopathies, and immune system failure. Okay, now your mitochondria failing, for example, the rate of congestive heart failure is increasing at over 400% faster than any other form of heart disease. It's because of mitochondrial failure in the northern hemisphere. Okay?
Well, I think that every time that there's a nuclear explosion, they just raise the background level that's safe for people.
Right, and so when we do tests, we were doing tests back in the 60s for the above-ground nuclear tests as far away as Nova Scotia and Norway, measuring baby teeth and looking at strontium and cesium-134, 137. And they were sampling baby teeth from all over North America and even over to Europe to see, hey, well, where's the plume going and how's it bioaccumulating in the baby teeth? So they were experimenting with the public by asking for baby teeth from children because they wanted to know how far they're above ground radiation. That's why they had the nuclear, army outside without body protection, being exposed to nuclear isotopes and then following their health afterward. That's why when the American scientists flew in like crazy after Nagasaki and Hiroshima, they wanted to know what was happening to the people because they wanted to quantitate the effect of radiation. And by the way, the Russians did the same damn thing. So did the Israelis when they took Falasa Jews from Ethiopia, and they were actually testing them by blasting them with radiation to see what it would do to children. They called it a treatment for ringworm, and actually they were blasting them with high-level radiation. Scary, hey?
Well, I don't like being a subject of beta testing by the drug industry.
Yeah,
I think that is immoral, and it should be illegal.
It is illegal, but you see, they think they're above the law, and that's why you see the government's doing false flag attacks like Sandy Hook and San Bernardino. And you remember now, some of these actually have spiritual dates. For example, remember the Brussels attack occurred, the Paris attack occurred, I think on a specific date, but the Brussels attack occurred in Yom Kippur, the eve of Yom Kippur. What they're planning, you can guarantee around Pesach is another major attack around Passover. This is weird. I mean, why these dates? Is because there's a spiritual element to this that defies what I call common logic.
Well, anyway, Florida Power and Light, the NRC, Nuclear Regulatory Agency, they finally they said that they could go ahead and start charging their customers so that they could build 2 more megawatt nuclear power stations there. It'd be number 5 and number 6. At the same time, they used the cooling water from the ocean to cool for the coolant around the reactor. And the sea level the sea temperature is rising, so they don't have the same differential that they used to have.
Right.
And so now what they're doing is they're drawing up groundwater because it's cooler, and they're contaminating the groundwater. I mean, they were already killing the creatures, the sea creatures. They were killing alligators, and almost nothing will kill an alligator.
Right. The thing is, somebody like me who's a toxicologist and I did oceanography before I went in, I'd be doing like autopsies. When I requested to do autopsies and body material testing in different organs from veterans that died after Gulf War, my boss, Major Swinder, threatened me. He said, if you do those tests, Deagle, you'll be fired or worse. And I said, what's worse? And he said, well, how about dead? I said, you know what? I know where you live, and I got buddies that are Delta Force, so you better shut up. Okay? Now, people need to know this about Dr. Deagle. I am compassionate, and I'm brave, but I won't take a centillion of crap from anybody. And if someone threatens me or my family or intellectually wants to engage, they're going to face a firestorm like they can't even imagine. Now, this is not a boast. This is a fact. And what I see is our stupid media won't ask the right questions. Our doctors, for example, even Michio Kaku, is a nuclear scientist, has not come out boldly against, and he's Japanese, from what they're doing to the Japanese people, because northern Japan is becoming a nuclear waste site. And it's not just there, it's across the North Pacific is entirely becoming a dead zone where the term I use is radiological desertification of the oceans. But it's not just northern hemisphere. People don't realize this transit across the trans-equatorial wind pattern. 300 times more water is carried south of the equator at 300 miles an hour every day than the Amazon River. So it's not just a northern hemisphere problem. It's eventually going to affect the southern hemisphere, but it's affecting what are called mutation rates for pathogens. It's decreasing the immune system function of all mammals, and it's causing a mitochondrial apocalypse where the mitochondria of all prokaryotic organisms is starting to fail. These are all symptoms of what I call a massive, what I call extinction level event. Extinction level event, ELE, is in progress as we speak.
Well, Dr. Bill, we've had an exciting hour. Okay.
Wow, it's a scary hour, but the thing is, if you tell the truth, you ask better questions, you pray to the Most High God to get solutions, and believe me, we need to do a lot of praying. We do proper research and we create thesis to develop a theory as to how to fix these damn things. But we can't rely on government or on even the so-called certifying agencies like the IAEA, the NRC, or even the scientific community of pundits out there in the media. We have to put it to them that if we don't have the answers, at least we have the best questions out there.
Well, better get your radiation counter now. Dr. Bill's got it on his website.
Yeah, exactly. We have through SEMF, as I say, the most important thing is to ask, E-X-E, not E-S-K, better questions.